Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the political situation of the country in the aftermath of the PTI lawmakers, as many as about 125 who've tendered their resignations. What impact is that going to have on the political situation of the country, particularly increasing challenges for the new government as well? We know that as many as 125 PTI parliamentarians have submitted their resignations to the acting Speaker of the National Assembly, Qasim Khan Suri. And these are yet to be accepted. But we also understand that this is something that had been decided earlier in the parliamentary committee, which was chaired by the former Prime Minister, and this was decided by the PTI to tender in their resignations. The impact that this is going to have on the way that the National Assembly is going to function, the challenges for the new government, that is what we're going to try and understand, and whether or not this was a good strategy in terms of PTI's own mandate as well. We understand that there have been a lot of rallies being taken out by the PTI as well with regards to the protesting their alleged imported government. But we also understand that at the same time the parliament existed, and resignation submitting the parliament is a good strategy or not is something that we're going to be talking about today, both for the government and also for the PTI as well. At the end of the show, we'll also be taking a look at the situation in the country with regards to the security challenges that continue to exist. We've seen earlier also a spike in terrorist activities after the Taliban regime came into power in Afghanistan, and now we also know that in two attacks within our country, we've seen 2 army men and 5 policemen martyred, and these attacks have been carried out in South Waziristan and Dia Khan districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We also understand that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has condemned these attacks and said that the national security challenges remain and that we are standing with our security forces and armed forces. But of course, we also understand that there's a lot of talk with regards to the strategies that needs to be employed, what really needs to be done, how do we cater to the Afghanistan soil being used against our territory, how do we engage with the Taliban regime, especially now that there is a different government at hand, and what sort of national security policy or strategy will the new government be following with regards to such incidents. This and more will be part of our discussion today, and as always, we've been joined in the studios by Raja Faisal and Farrukh Pitafi, and we've also been joined online by Mr. Imran Khan, who's the Senator of the PMLN. Thank you very much, Mr. Imran, for joining us and being a part of the debate. I'll start with you, Mr. Imran. When we look at what is happening in the political situation of the country, we understand that the government has a lot of challenges. Many of them are with regards to the economic situation and the foreign policy as well. But another major challenge is, of course, the presence in the National Assembly. We also know that the Prime Minister was elected by 174, which is a narrow margin. And we also understand that the government itself has come into power through a coalition. And that, of course, poses its own challenges. Now that the PTI lawmakers, most of them, have decided to resign, how will this impact the way that the new government wants to take all the parliamentarians together?
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. On the day when Imran Khan was ousted, I actually counted the number of lawmakers who were sitting on the government seats, and there were about 120 of them, around 120 when I counted them. So, and the total strength of the National Assembly is about 342. So PTI controls the minority stake within the National Assembly. So if they all resign, what will happen is that there will be another election, and whoever will win those elections will come into power. So I don't think that PTI will go along those lines and actually will resign. I think it's more of about like a political rhetoric or a political narrative rather than anything else. I mean, not even one of their candidate has actually come into the speaker or speaker's staff or ask him or told him about like the resignation. So I mean, unless you write down on a piece of paper and submit it yourself, those resignations doesn't actually really count. So, and as far as the economy and the foreign policy is concerned, I mean, there are a lot of reservations that we have. I mean, we are really worried about like the state of affairs within the Foreign Office. I mean, there is a huge, scandal which is going around about the letter. So we want to settle that issue, and we also want to, restart CPEC, which is extremely important for Pakistan. We believe that China and Pakistan are iron brothers, and there's a great area where we can collaborate. China is not only a defense power, but also like big is the second largest economy in the world. They are an economic power as well. It is very important that Pakistan engages the Chinese government and the Communist Party, and to show them our plans about development of Pakistan, and so that we can basically chart out a plan with them
Right, right.
through which
Mr.
we can
Adnan, we'll
restart.
talk more on the foreign policy front as well, but I also want to understand the impact with regards to the resignations of the PTI lawmakers. I understand what you're saying, perhaps in terms of the numbers, it may not impact the new government as such, but when we look at decisions that will be made by the new government and the symbolic value that they will hold for the people of Pakistan, don't you think that it may perhaps be seen more of a one-sided decision making process, or something that is perhaps devoid of any accountability?
I mean, when you say that all of the PTI members resigning how would that impact the government? Is that what your question is?
That's right.
Okay, so look, I mean, we don't. I mean, in an ideal world, I wouldn't want like the opposition to resign in such large numbers. I mean, it's not good for a democratic country or a democratic process. However, I mean, we cannot force anyone to stay within the assemblies. And I personally believe that most of the PTI lawmakers will not resign. Even if Imran Khan will ask them, a large number of them will not resign because they know that if they will resign today and the elections are going to be held in the next 2 months, they're not the chances of winning the elections are going to be very slim because people remember the high inflation, the incompetency, the corruption, and all of what has been happening in the last about like four
Right.
years in the country.
Mr. Afnan, is
So,
there any effort made from the government side, or are there any plans for for the government to be making any efforts to get the PTI lawmakers on board and make sure that they're also part of the parliament? Is the government planning to make any such efforts?
I mean, I can tell you as a senator and as part of the PMLN that I mean I wouldn't want the PTI MNAs to resign, but I don't think that that's something that Imran Khan Saab would understand because if you look at his decision-making process for the last 4 years, it's mainly centric around what favors him. So since he is not the prime minister, he wouldn't actually really care if the rest of the assembly is there or not. So I would not think that that would if even if we ask them, they will change their stance. I mean, especially if you look at like the narrative that they are evolving, it is very dangerous. I mean, they are going along the lines of telling the people of Pakistan that they are the ones who are patriotic and everybody else is like a traitor. So that is a very dangerous thing. So I mean, we don't want I mean to the MNS to resign, but
Right,
I doubt
right,
that,
Senator Saab.
and I believe that they will.
That's true. But Senator Saab, earlier you were talking about the Speaker's role in accepting resignation. If I'm not wrong, according to Rule 44, 45, 46 of the Rules of Procedures and Article 64, Clause 1, it is basically the Speaker or Deputy Speaker's prerogative whether to accept any form of resignation as a resignation or not. So is it not basically up to the man who is still sitting there and you want to impeach him, but you haven't been able to actually vote against him, and these resignations can be accepted in a heartbeat?
Right now, there is no speaker in the National Assembly because this Asad Kaisar Saab resigned. I
Yeah.
believe that the deputy speaker is still there because he was there on the day of the election of the prime minister.
He's the
And I
acting
think
speaker.
in the next couple of days we will have a speaker who will be elected by I think it's going to be on the 16th of April. So once a speaker is elected, those members who actually want to resign will have to go into the speaker's chamber and will have to hand over the resignation to the speaker by hand. I believe that is also one of the clauses in the rules. So if that happens, then I believe that the speaker will have to accept those resignations. But I doubt that a large number of PTI MNAs will resign.
Yeah, Dr. Afnan, we are hearing this as well, that of course the resignations would be coming in the Punjab Assembly as well in coming days, and obviously about KPK government as well. And we know that in KPK, I mean, PTI has a majority government out there. So, would that have any effect on administration as well as can it create some kind of political chaos or deepen the political chaos in the country?
Look, I mean, the idea, if you look at the political strategy of resignations is that it should come in large numbers. It should come in such large numbers that one has to dissolve one of the assemblies, either National Assembly or provincial assemblies. Then they have an impact. That is one of the reasons why when we wanted to resign, People Party was not on board. We did not apply that strategy because without People Party being on board, that strategy will not work. So, and the same thing is true with PTI as well. So if PTI goes with that strategy of resignation from National Assembly, I believe maybe 60 or 70 MNAs will resign. Not all of PTI members will resign, and more or less the same percentage will apply on Punjab Assembly as well, and
All right.
KP. So
All right. Let me also
if
welcome in the debate Mr. Haider Zaman Qureshi, leader of the Pakistan People's Party. Thank you very much, Mr. Qureshi, for joining us and being a part of the show. We're talking about the PTI's resignations and the impact that is going to have with regards to decision making by the new government and perhaps the overall political process in the country as well. How do you see this particular decision by the PTI lawmakers impacting the way that the National Assembly is actually going to move forward and the way that the political situation is going to evolve, considering, of course, we do need a strong opposition as part of any democracy?
Thank you very much for your invitation to the show. I think, in principle, the policy of resignations from Parliament is never considered to be a democratic action because you are disenfranchising the electorate that had given you the mandate to represent them in the Parliament. Having said that, PTI has a reputation of running away from Parliament. In August 2012, they had 34, 35 members in the National Assembly. They resigned. And after the resignations, it transpired that 5 of those were not admissible in accordance with law. Another 5 refused to come, and after 8 or 9 months, they were head over heels begging the Speaker of the National Assembly and the then leading opposition party, People's Party, to get them a face saving. So this is the historical perspective of that PTI, which had 34 members, and none of them eventually resigned. Now we come to 2022. I think the rationale given by them is absolutely defective. And I don't see this theory of resignations carrying through for the prime reason that the entire party is in dire straits. The members are not convinced. These resignations were forcibly taken. They are not in accordance with law. They are not handwritten or addressed to the appropriate authority. And as and when the Speaker of the National Assembly summons them one by one, you will
Right.
see that they will all fall like a house of cards, and
Right.
they will
Heather
not
Zaman Sahab,
resign.
this is Farrukh Pitafi. Let me ask you about various rules of the procedure, right? Particularly rule number 12 and 16 actually ensure and tell us what becomes of the speaker if he resigns, that the deputy speaker is fully empowered to act as the speaker, right? And at this moment, there is more than 100 resignations that are lying there with the office of the speaker. And then you were talking about these resignations being extorted or being forced upon the members. But at this moment, the gentleman who's sitting as the caretaker or acting speaker is fully empowered to accept those resignations, whatever they might be, according to Rule 44, 45, 46, and then, of course, Article 62(1) of the Constitution. don't you think that if more than 100 members actually resign from the parliament, it will have very negative impact on the image of the National Assembly?
Well, I don't have the benefit of the rule in front of me, but I will certainly take cue from you. You read Rule 12. What does Rule 12 exactly say? Could you just read that for me? I think that will
I don't
have
have
the
the
answer
text
entailed
before
in
me,
it.
sir, but I can tell you that if the speaker resigns, his resignation is accepted, then it takes you to rule number 16, which actually says that the caretaker, the deputy speaker becomes acting speaker, and he has full powers of the speaker till the time he doesn't resign himself.
Okay. Now the magic rule here is Rule 14, which says that unless the deputy speaker is notified as a speaker, acting speaker does not have the powers of a speaker. So under Rule 14, a notification has to be issued, which was never issued. Secondly, you are not factoring into the account that the deputy speaker himself is also under a vote of no confidence. Now, if there is a vote of no confidence against the speaker, or in this case, deputy speaker, he cannot exercise any of his powers as a officiating speaker except preside on the session. Now, on the last date, when the vote of no confidence was carried through, and uh, Mr. Qasim Suri also declined, and he resigned. To the best of my knowledge, if he even hasn't resigned, he is still under a vote of no confidence. So, for all practical purposes, he cannot exercise his powers, even if a Rule 14 notification had been issued empowering him to be a speaker. The difference between being a speaker and being an acting speaker are as easily describable, that an acting president cannot make an appointment under the constitution or dissolve the assembly, but a president can. So
Yeah.
the acting speaker cannot do or exercise these powers. And you will
Yeah.
see on the 16th of April, when the assembly is again scheduled to be convened, all this will very easily come into the public foray. And till such time, even the chief whip has still not submitted the resignations of these members, which in my legal opinion, they are not resignations in accordance with law, as they are just being filled on a stereotyped letterhead of PTI, and they are not handwritten, and they do not fulfill the requirements of the rules of procedure. And be that as it may, even if they are carried forward, it will of the Speaker and Election Commission as and when they decide to hold. But we would be very happy, we would welcome to contest on all those seats where the Election Commission accepts the resignations and notifies a by-election. But I
Yeah, but
don't, as a political worker, as from experience, I don't see much of that happening. Yeah, maybe a dozen or two hardcore loyalists of the ex-prime minister may see him through the light of the day, but I don't see the rest of the lot
yeah,
going
All
that
right.
route, which
Dr.
is
Afnan,
absolutely suicidal.
All right.
yeah, Dr. Afnan, the way obviously things are shaping up on ground, of course, we are seeing that massive rallies are, coming out of the people for PTI, and supposedly, let's suppose that all of the resignations they get accepted, all the provincial PTI members and the National Assembly members they go home, and then of course the things would lead towards the by-election. And I just wanted to ask if the things are moving towards a by-election at this magnitude, a huge number of by-elections would be taking place. Would the ECP require 6 months, because they had already mentioned that they require time? And will we be seeing EVM and overseas voting happening in that, sir?
First of all, I mean, if there are going to be resignations in large numbers, there will be on the seats which were contested in the elections of 2018. So the delimitation will not apply on those seats. So the issue of like conducting elections will not be that difficult. Secondly, the law that have been changed, the ECP is very clear about that, and that is that EVMs from a logistical, from a procurement perspective is not possible to be implemented. I mean, for instance, like there's a shortage of computer chip around the world right now. Even if the ECP issues a tender notice today, it will take them maybe like a year or even more to get the microchips. And then you have like the training of the staff, then you have the logistics, the charging of the machines. So all of that is not, it's not something that is even possible. So that is, I think, out of question. As far as I-voting is concerned, if you look at the report that was submitted by the Spanish firm, which was hired by Ministry of IT by the previous government, the Spanish firm was very clear about that, that the existing system can easily be manipulated, and you can, like, change the number of votes, you can hack the system. So the report, if you look at the report, it's very clear that you need to develop a new system for I-voting if you want to go along with that. With the existing one, it's not possible to use it in a fair manner. So again, I doubt that that will be happening. So if in case there is going to be a large number of resignations, I think there will be by-elections with the rules that were there in 2018, and new candidates will get elected.
All right, Mr. Qureshi, I understand what you've been saying with regards to what do you think the PTI lawmakers are going to do in terms of the resignations. But if we look at the situation where we come to the point where we do in fact see the resignations and they are accepted, and then you move towards by-elections, what will be the stance of the PTI then, or what can their move actually be with regards to their participation in those elections? Will they be contesting it? Will they be part of those by-elections, and will they be only doing that to resign again?
Boycott?
Well, let's discuss it on the assumption, as you have very aptly pointed out, that the resignations go through. The only reasons they claim to be resigning is that they want a fresh electorate, a fresh mandate from the electorate. Certainly, if that is not happening, they will be into trouble, and they'll fall into trouble, because if it's a by-election, why would they want to contest that by-election? And that is the entire argument. And they would want to force the present government and the provincial assemblies to follow suit. Now, if we are not having a full-fledged general election, it will become very difficult. And as pointed out by my learned brother, my senator, Mr. Afnanullah, you see, the by-elections will have to be conducted on the 2018 delimitations and the situation as it was at that time. However, if we are to go for a fresh general election, we have two constitutional impediments and certain electoral reforms. One of which is the September 21, the parliamentary committees on electoral reforms report, which was laid on the floor of the Senate. And the government has to consider the 72 amendments, 33 of which were unanimously recommended. That's one part in which EVM and I-voting and other electoral laws have to be corrected. Thirdly, there has to be a constitutional amendment, because a general election and the delimitations after a census cannot be conducted on a provisional census. As we all know, the last census that was done was notified provisionally. So there'll have to be a constitutional amendment to make a provisional census the foundation for carrying out a delimitation exercise, because the Constitution provides that whenever there is a census notified, the delimitation has to be carried out. And in addition to that, you all know that FATA has been merged into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So there'll have to be adjustment and renumbering of the seats of the National Assembly in the Parliament. So that also requires a constitutional amendment. So if PTI goes out of the Parliament, which we don't want, we want them to be in Parliament, we want them to be part of the legislative process. We would want their valuable input in legislation, in carrying out electoral reforms, in carrying out accountability reforms, and even constitutional reforms. But if they are not there, all this cannot take place, and that will certainly become a problem area, and we'll have to certainly handle that. So I would
Right.
still hope that they will stay in parliament and
Right,
not
Mr.
go
Qureshi,
for
will there be any efforts in this regard? You're saying you'd want them to be part of the parliament, but will your party be trying actively to engage with them, with the party leadership perhaps, to get them on board again?
Absolutely. If you recall, the night the Prime Minister was voted out, President Asif Zardari uh, offered former Prime Minister Imran Khan that we will welcome them to sit in the opposition, and he should lead the opposition as a leader of the opposition. You see, now if they resign, GTA is in Parliament. They have not resigned, and the so-called PTI's disgruntled MNAs who did not vote for uh, Shahbaz Sharif, as the record shows. So they are in parliament. So if nobody else comes back and all of them resign, so we will have a leader of the opposition from the disgruntled MNAs of PTI and GDA. So, and if there is any other member left, so this will be the opposition. So we would
Right.
want that there should be a healthy opposition. We would want there should be a constructive and a meaningful
Yeah,
opposition,
but
and that is the spirit of democracy. And
right.
we would expect PTI to get over this syndrome that they have, that they don't want to sit. They only want to sit in a parliament when they are in government.
Right,
The
and
former
that's
Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid only wants to be part of the parliament when he is the Interior Minister, and
yeah.
same goes for the entire cabinet lot that the
Well,
last
that is a
government had.
legitimate
That is
observation,
not
Qureshi
fair.
Saab. That is a legitimate observation, Qureshi Saab. But let me actually take the question to Dr. Afnanullah Khan, because at this moment, sir, your party enjoys the premiership, and the onus essentially is on your leadership, right, to reach out across the aisle. Is there a possibility that we can see that the Prime Minister reaching out to Imran Khan Saab and actually trying to woo him? Because at this moment it seems that Imran Khan Saab is not in the mood to be part of the system, and he will keep on agitating. We don't know whether the numbers will increase or they will go down, but the polarization in the country is immense.
No, I agree with you. The polarization in the country is not good for anyone. But I mean, if you remember when we were in the opposition, the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab offered Charter of Economy to then government and Imran Khan Saab, but they refused it. I mean, they outrightly refused it, and they did not even consider it. And even when we were in government, the previous government between 2013 and 2018, during the time of the dharnas, we actually approached them and we asked them, like, we want to there to be a good environment for politics and for development, but they refused it at that time as well. So I doubt that. I mean, our overtures will be taken seriously by the PTI leadership. And but since you're saying that, I would like to invite the PTI leadership to be part of the parliament, to be part of the consultative process, to be part of like the committees, and to work like in a way which is good for the country. I mean, this kind of polarization where we're calling each other traitors is not good for anyone. Nobody is a traitor in this country. We all want this country to move forward. But if you come up with a narrative which is so divisive, it is so dangerous for everyone.
Yeah, Qureshi Saab, I wanted to come to, as you earlier mentioned, that obviously the disgruntled members of PTI, they could sit on the opposition
Opposition.
benches. Could we see Noor Alam Khan Saab as leading them benches as a opposition leader, and will it be considered as a very friendly opposition, sir?
I don't know whether it will be Noor Alam Khan Sahab or Raja Riaz Sahab. That's for the remaining members of the opposition to be. I just gave you a hypothetical scenario. You could have Dr. Fahmida Mirza or any of the GDA members if they were to lead the opposition, and the disgruntled members chose to be with the government. But I am just drawing a hypothetical scenario because 174 members voted for Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. if all or most of the disgruntled members choose to now support the Treasury when Mia Shehbaz Sharif is due to take his vote of confidence as the Prime Minister, obviously then you will have very skeleton opposition left, and one of them will have to lead. But I don't see that happening. And I think Mr. Pitafi asked a very pertinent question to Mr. Afnanullah. I think once the euphoria, once this traitor lettergate syndrome settles, and it will settle after the National Security Committee of the Parliament goes and the evidence is shown to it, and the ambassador comes and testifies, all this drama will have a sunset. And once the sunset is operative, you will see a lot of PTI members who were told to resign on the basis of this rhetoric of nationalism, patriotism, and anti-traitor mindset. They would part ways with Imran Khan because once the reality check happens, I don't think there are very senior and sensible members who were already not in agreement and consonance with the resignation phenomena. So they'll part ways, and you will have a healthy opposition. That's
Right.
my political
Senator,
assessment. We can do a show on that in a couple of months' time.
let's hope we can do that as well. But my Senator Afnanullah Khan, once again, regarding the Cabinet Committee on National Security, that is a very important body, but the quorum is still not full. At this moment, we have the entire cabinet missing. How soon can we see the cabinet being formed so that this committee can also meet again?
I believe that the cabinet formation will complete by tomorrow or by maximum latest by the day after tomorrow. There is a very large consultative process which is already initiated, and it's just coming to a final conclusion. And you will see the names of the people coming tomorrow, maybe maximum the day after tomorrow.
All right. Mr. Qureshi, with regards to the appointment of Bilawal Bhutto Zardari as the new foreign minister, there was, of course, talk with whether or not that needs to, that is a good move for the chairman of the PPP to be the foreign minister under a different prime minister. How is that going to be, that situation going to evolve with regards to the decision making by the PPP? Has the leadership made a decision yet on this regard?
I think consultations are in process, but the question of Mr. Bilawal Bhutto being the foreign minister has a lot of things to be considered. It's not that he would not want to become. I think once we are supporting this government, we want this government to succeed. We want the foreign policy to improve. We want the meltdown of economy to be arrested. And of course, we would want Pakistan interest first. But you see, you have to understand that when you are on a foreign minister, you have to be engaged, and there is extensive travel. There is a lot of time commitment out of Pakistan. Now, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto is also chairman of Pakistan's very large political party, and his internal commitments. And since this government is going to be sooner or later going into an electioneering mode, we have to see whether we can justify his time and availability for party affairs. So the party is considering that fact. But having said that, even if the responsibility of foreign ministry is given to Pakistan People's Party and our party leadership accepts that, I'm sure we have very competent and fine people amongst our parliamentary lot who can lead Pakistan's foreign policy under the guidance of President Zardari and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Chairman Bilawal Bhutto. I think each one of us, whether we are in the cabinet or outside the cabinet, Pakistan comes first, and irrespective of being in the
All right.
cabinet or not, there could be, he could lead the chairmanship of the Kashmir committee, he could be a special envoy. We have to look at out of box solutions. When
Absolutely.
August 5th happened in Kashmir, this outgoing government, except for the Friday 1 minute silence, there's hardly any constructive and substantial step that they took. They should have sent special envoys. They should have been big enough, magnanimous enough to request the opposition leaders, send them to various key capitals of the world. So Pakistan People's Party and our leadership feels, and I'm sure Mia Shahbaz Sharif feels, that we all have to put in our bit, irrespective of whether we are in the cabinet or outside the cabinet. We need to make this government successful. We need to solve the challenges that Pakistan faces in terms of foreign policy, in terms of economic meltdown, in terms of terrorism, and all other areas. So it is a joint opposition's government. It is not one
Absolutely.
person's government, one
Absolutely.
party's
And
government.
that's the stance that has been put forward by the Prime Minister as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Haider Zaman Qureshi and Senator Imran Khan for joining us and being a part of the debate and talking to us with regards to the challenges that the new government faces in the possibility that the PTI lawmakers may not be part of the parliament. When we look at the situation and the different issues that have been concerning Pakistan for quite a while now, of course, there is the economic situation, but there's also the security challenges which have increased since the Taliban regime has come into power in Afghanistan. There has been concerns and they've been shared with regards to the soil being used against Pakistan. And we also know that there was a spike in terrorist incidents within our own country as well. And just recently, there have been 2 such incidents again as well in South Waziristan and DI Khan districts as well. And this, of course, points towards the larger concern of what really needs to be done with regards to that. Faisal, when we look at the different measures that Pakistan has been taking previously, one of them, the important aspect of which was that there has to be engagement with the Taliban regime for them to be able to facilitate or help curtail the usage of their soil against Pakistan. But despite sharing of these concerns, there hasn't been any real efforts with from the Taliban regime with regards to this. Now that we have a new government in power, how do you think we opt to proceed with the Taliban regime and make our concerns heard?
Sana, it's a very good question, and we know that obviously the previous government, it has been trying its hard to talk to the Taliban regime over it, because it's a it's all reality that there are 2 provinces in Afghanistan. We have time and again mentioned their names, and them 2 provinces, they are being used, Kunnar and Nangarhar, to penetrate terrorism, obviously in Pakistan. ISIS Khorasan is there, then there are several other banned outfits in other countries, they are there as well. We know that TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, it is being injected from there, and that is why it's all happening. We know that the previous government was in talks with the Taliban over it, that they need to control it, but time and again the only problem which was being faced is that the Taliban regime maintained that they are trying to obviously take care of the humanitarian crisis that is going on in there, because their economy is not settled up, and they themselves are facing terrorism at the hands of ISIS Khorasan in their own country. So to me, I think the current, the new government, it needs to pace it up. It needs to talk with the Taliban regime. It needs to involve other countries as well. The ones are facing threats from them 2 provinces, and I think a strategy should be made, and diplomatically Taliban regime needs to be talked with, and a solution should be met.
Okay, Farrukh, we understand that there's, of course, the national security policy and framework that was given by the previous government, and you also interviewed the national security advisor, the previous one, and spoke at length with regards to this, and this was a major milestone for Pakistan with regards to the security challenges. And it was said then that this is something that can be utilized by the governments to come, and is irrespective of any regime change. So when we look at now the new government and the challenges that we still continue to face, how do you think this national security policy is going to be taken forward?
Right. I think there was consensus, if you remember, that there was civil military consensus at that time also. So that policy stays, right?
Okay.
But regarding what you asked earlier, and that was about Afghanistan, let me actually point out some complicating factors. One, of course, as pointed out by Faisal, there are ungoverned spaces in Afghanistan which have not properly been regulated, and that's why many of these factors or elements might be there. But then there is also an image problem. Afghan Taliban have a history, and I'm not talking about any Western power or any other neighbor, perhaps the country that has been accused of being most friendly during their first tenure, that was back until 2002. At that time also, Pakistan had a problem. Lashkar-e-Jhangvi's head was hiding in Afghanistan, and he was conducting a lot of terrorist acts in Pakistan. And our interior minister flew to Afghanistan and talked to Afghan leadership, and they actually told Pakistani interior minister, we don't know where exactly is the man at this moment, where he is hiding, while our intelligence suggested that the person was sitting in Kabul, nowhere else. So these are very important questions that we need to actually work on. And then there is a complicating reality that you have to take on board, and that is Russian government actually acknowledging or recognizing or establishing diplomatic ties with Afghan Taliban.
Right.
That means our leverage is declining, it is not increasing. So in that situation, we have to talk to them and press them that regardless of other elements, we have to take care of TTP, and we have to ensure that no TTP element actually crosses into Pakistan or attacks anybody, right? That is one thing. And then we need a National Action Plan 2.0, because the last one was in 2014 and it seems to be outdated today.
All right. Thank you for that analysis, and of course the important aspects that are there that still continue to exist, and that the government really needs to look at as well. There are many challenges that still remain, but our security challenges need our utmost attention, specifically our people and our armed forces who have continued to sacrifice their lives for Pakistan, and we need to be able to do something to address the root cause of all of these issues and actually make an effort towards curbing terrorism within Pakistan. That's all we have from the debate. We'll see you tomorrow.
इतनी चीनी डाली है